Hello folks, and welcome back to the Browser Gaming Legion channel. So this channel is relatively new, and I've actually already gotten several questions from a handful of different players, or at least potential players if they don't already play. This one here is from an individual who plays, and he asked me a few times to go ahead and put this in a video for him, and hopefully it helps him out and anybody else who happens to see this. So let's take a look at the question here. So the first question I got here was, hey, I would really like a video on how to use Karls. Can you please explain them in detail on YouTube? Thanks a lot, I'd appreciate it. The next part of his question here, it coincides with that. He said he's having trouble using ammunition and he would like to see how to use it efficiently and correctly. Well, we're going to go ahead and take care of both of those issues, problems, questions in today's video. So stay tuned here and let's take a look. Alright, so I can see really two ways here to do this. I can just randomly pull out a Karl and try to show you, or I can find something to use the Karls on, which, you know, it's more fun to do that rather than just show you how to plain old use a Karl. So let's go ahead and take a look throughout some of these maps and see what we can find here. Alright, let's see if we can find a map where there's not too many guns on a planet, but just enough so you can see how to properly set them up and why they're set up the way they are. Let's look at 126 here. There's a red one over here somewhere. He's probably got shields on everything. Forget that. Be a waste of time. You know what? Let's check out the home map here. There's always stuff that needs done on here. I forgot to make more. Oh well. Well, that kind of nixes that idea. Well, you know what? No, it doesn't have to. Let's, this is in the way here. Alright, so say you have a mass of Karls like this. Unless you really know what you're doing, I don't recommend grabbing them all and moving them very close to the planet unless you know what you're doing, because the last thing you want to do is you want to waste them. I mean, even me, you know, for how many I have in stock on all the different maps, I mean, I've got over 300 Karls. I don't want to lose any of them. I mean, they're a pain in the butt to replace and they're expensive. So we're just going to move it outside of our target near another planet. Alright, anyhow, let's go ahead and take a look at the properties of the Karls here. So once again, when we hover over our planet, we hover over the Karl icon, we see that it has a firepower between 40 and 10,000, armor of 1500, weapons range of 11, sight of 15, military of 2900, and so on and so forth. For the purposes of this video here, we want to pay attention to the weapons range. Now, why do we want to pay attention to this? We obviously can't put a Karl 30 paces away from an enemy planet. It's just going to get blown up. The blue guns around your planet, around any enemy planet, they have a weapons range of a minimum of 18. So, anything beyond 18, you're going to get shot. So for me personally, as a general rule of thumb, let me get a Bravo here. I place everything a minimum, with the exception of a few times when you have to get closer in order to see stuff that's on planets. But as a general rule of thumb, I put everything at a minimum distance of 20 paces. Now, what do I mean by 20 paces? Well, we can see that over here on the right hand side. You see that number moving around here in the corner? You have an x-axis and a y-axis. You have vertical and horizontal. These numbers, they correspond to specific points or specific targets on the map that you're on. Now, there are two ways to determine how far away you set up from a planet. When you can see the planet, you can go right, I hate that pop-up. You can go right here in the center, and from that center, count over via what you see at the top right, moving in your XY axis. You can count over 20 paces. That's going to put you your minimum distance away. So 20 paces, we're starting at 408. 18 is 10. 28 is 20. That's going to guarantee your safety there and anything after that. But remember, these have a weapons range of 11. So we obviously can't set them up 11 paces. They're going to get destroyed. So what we have to do is we have to activate these guns, and those guns are activated with fodder. In addition to the gun having a weapons range of 11, if you read the Karl, which is a heavy bomber, it has 3 times the range when the orbital guns are firing. So in order to make the orbital guns fire, you have to toss in something for them to shoot at. You obviously don't want to use your bombers to do this with. You really don't want to use your Rabos for anything beyond 15 blue guns, because it gets very, very difficult, and the response time between your click and the movement on screen, it's going to result in a lot of Rabos getting destroyed. So the best thing you can do, at least when you're starting out, are use Wents. Wents are exclusively built and found here on your home map. We'll go ahead and make some. Alright, so let's go over to our enemy planet. Say we can't see where the middle is. We can guesstimate where the middle is, but we can't physically see. Here's what I do. The words enemy planet here. 2 separate words. In the middle, you see a tiny space. This works as the middle of the planet. So if you're going left or right, if you're going horizontally, if you count over 20, paying attention to the top right-hand corner on the mini-map right here, if you count over left 20 paces, you're going to get 38, 28, 18. Watch. It's never going to get hit if you put it 20 paces. And this planet would light it up because you see it as a detector on it. Now, let me put it 15 paces away. You're going to see that the gun is going to immediately fire. So we have 38, 28, 23. It's going to shoot. That's because it's within the firing distance. Let's go ahead and toss us on a planet to heal here. Okay. So what does this have to do with our Karls and setting them up properly? Well, if we do some basic math, we can determine that the maximum distance this can be away from the planet to fire is a distance of 33 paces. For me in particular, I like to do somewhere between 25 and 30, and here's why. If I'm setting up in a contested area, I want to make sure I have room in front and in back in order to set up some kind of defense if necessary. Now that 33 paces, that's also vertical as well. So, for instance, we're going to go ahead and move one of these 30 paces just for simplicity's sake. We're starting here in the middle, 438, 28, 18, 08, 408. So we can be here all this far away from your planet and still fire. So we're going to do that to all these. 408, 408. Now, just to show the maximum distance we can place these in order to fire on the planet, we're going to do 30 paces vertical and 30 paces horizontal. So when we're doing a planet that we can't see and we want to go vertical, we use the very tippy top right here in the middle, and you count up 30 paces. So we have 65, 55, 45, 35. So we can go all the way to 535 and still fire on our planet. So 30 paces this way, 30 paces this way to 408. So 408, 535. It can go one or two more paces, but to make it nice, even round numbers, we're just going to do this. So we're going to place this all the way up here so we know our maximum distance from the enemy planet. While that's traveling, we'll go ahead and get the rest in position. And you know what? Once we have our maximum distance, it also makes it a tad bit easier. If you're not anal about precisely placing everything, you can put stuff relatively in the middle here and you're not going to have a problem. So just go ahead and put the rest in the middle here. And in truth, the same goes when you're going south as well. 30 paces, counting down south. So 65, 75, 85, and 95. 95 all the way over to 08. Now we can't do that because that stupid pop-up's in the way. It's one of the most ridiculous, stupid things that they've done in the game that I've asked them specifically at least several dozen times to fix. Even just a button to turn it on and off on the map that you're on would be phenomenal, but no, they don't do a damn thing. They don't even respond to you. So we're going to put them on the outer edge here. Not only does this keep our Karls safe, or relatively safe, depending on what you may or may not have coming at you, but if you so chose to, this will also allow you to fill these up with ammunition if you start the ammunition on the planet. I personally don't do that. Some people choose to. Actually, a lot of people choose to. I personally don't. It doesn't make a difference to me. Alright, so now that we have these set up, we are at 30 paces away horizontally and 30 paces away vertically. That guarantees us that all of these Karls will fire once something is tossed in here. We're going to toss in a cheap group of MAU. Each and every one of these are now firing. Now, let's go ahead and move one from 408 to 405. That should be right outside the firing distance. We'll take two groups of Aquin and we'll toss them in here. Now, as you can see, this is outside of the firing distance of the 33 paces. So it's simply not going to fire. So we need to move it back up here so it's in range. And there it goes again. Now, there are other nuances with Karls. It really all depends on the map and the environment that you're setting them up in. If you're setting them up in a contested area, in a contested map, you don't want to spread them apart like this. You want to have them clumped together in sections, or really groups. So for me personally, depending on how many I have on a map, I usually group them in bunches of 4. So I'll count over my 30. Gives me to 408. Now when you put them in bunches or groups, they don't go exactly where you place them on the map. So I'll actually go 2 paces towards the planet when we're at 30 paces to 28 paces. That will both evenly spread them out. It'll also make sure they're in firing distance when they don't go exactly where you want them to go. I'll show you what I mean. You tell them all to go to this one area and they don't. See, they just spread out and go all over the place a little bit. But anyhow, I do them in groups of 4 and I put them in bunches. I do this for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, so I can easily grab a group and move it to a safe location or a different area of the map if I needed to do it quickly. If I have some guy chasing these Karls, I can quickly do a scoop, tell it to go up here, tell this to go here, and they can only follow one group, and you do that in several different groups. It's just a strategy to save as many Karls as you can. The other reason for doing this is because of ammunition. And that actually leads into the second part of his question here, how to properly manage your ammunition. Well, ammunition is one of those things where they get you in this game as far as expense goes. You have to have ammunition, and you have to have a lot of it. Me in particular, I've got about 12.5 maps that do nothing but exclusively make ammunition. Now, while I'm not going to show all the maps that I have that do that, I will show you a few of them, and they'll be the ones that I've shown on the other maps as well, or on the other videos rather as well. So one of them for me is 163. So whenever you're about to start a planet, or at least start taking a planet, you need to learn how to manage your ammunition, and you do this by not only making sure you have maps full of it, or having other people that can help you, but you also need to make sure you're staging it. You need to make sure that you're putting it near the wormhole, the safest wormhole that is closest to the planet that you want to capture. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to stage all of this ammunition right at this wormhole. Now, eventually, I shouldn't say eventually, almost guaranteed, whenever you're in the heat of a battle, whenever you're trying to take a planet and you need to take it quickly, if you're in a contested area, if you have enemy ships coming towards you, you can't spend too much time off of your map. If you do that, your stuff is going to get shot. It's going to die. And it doesn't matter how long you've been playing this game. It will happen. So you need to learn how to send them across quickly. Now, a lot of times you have to click several times to get it across. It's a bug in the game. They don't fix it. I don't know why. So what you can do to mitigate how many times you have to try to send ammunition across, click once, click your target map, twice, target map. That usually works more often than not. So we're going to do it again here, twice, 3. If you have to keep jumping back and forth, do it 3 at a time. Don't do it any more than 5 at a time because it just takes too long. What that allows you to do is it allows you to switch back to your main map that you're using the map that you're using to, the map that you're taking the planet on. It allows you to evaluate and see what's going on there while not remaining off the map for too long. And it also allows you to start the travel time between wherever you're pulling in the ammunition to wherever your Karls are. So now that that's going on, that's traveling, we can go back to 130 or 163 or wherever you're keeping your ammunition on. And don't forget to re-queue once you start transferring over. If you get into the habit, almost like a muscle memory of doing that, you'll never run out of it. You'll always have it because you're always making it. So let's go ahead, send over 3 more. And once that one is about to go over, switch back to your target map, click swipe, and send them. Okay, I'm going to do it one more time, just for redundancy purposes. This is probably the most boring and monotonous part of this, simply because you have to do it. You can't get ammunition otherwise. But me personally, I keep enough ammunition at all times so that I can personally take a minimum of 2 30-gun bases that are blue, level 3 blue 30-gun bases. Now that's obviously a lot easier for me since I'm much larger. For you guys just starting out, that's going to be a goal to work up to, which, you can do it if you so choose to play this game. Alright, so now that we have are ammunition here and ammunition coming, you can keep your fodder going in. Now, normally, if this was in a contested area, I'd have a combination, depending on how much free space I had to pull ships over here. No, this one's not firing. It's a little bit too far away. But depending on the amount of ships here and how contested it is, you won't want to have this many Karls. The bare minimum, if you want to complete a planet in any decent amount of time, you want to have 6 Karls. That will allow you to complete the planet while still having enough room and space to bring over fodder and ammunition, especially if you don't have anybody helping you. It's much easier if you can have other people helping you. A few other things to consider when you want to protect your Karls. If you have one and only one ship type to choose to protect your Karls while they're sitting there, absolutely unequivocally, the one ship type that you want to choose is the Aquin. And here's why. Aside from the fact of the superior firepower, the reason why you want it is because of its speed. Karls have a speed of 2. You can see it right here. Aquin also have a speed of 2. So that means whenever you grab these together, your Aquin are going to be right next to the Karls as they move. They're not going to go out in front of them, and they're not going to lag behind. So that means that anybody that wants to attack your Karls, they're going to have to get in shooting distance, and they're going to be in distance of those Aquin. That's one of the best ways to protect your Karls, that is. Especially when you're running away from something or just setting up a proper defense here. And later on, when I get enough people here, I mean, I could do it myself, but it requires rearranging a lot of things around. But when I get enough people, what I'll do is I'll show you how to set one up with a proper defense when you have enemies in the area, and a lot of enemies at that. Now, what is the quantity of Karls that you should use? That largely depends on a few things. That depends on A, how many groups you have on a map, B, how much military you have on a map, C, how much time you have to take a planet, and D, how much you have in resources and how much you have stockpiled. Now, I know that seems like a lot, and it is, but let me see if I can break it down here for you. Okay, so I like to say, and it's very true, this game is very much set up like a socialist economy. The more firepower you create or add, the lesser that quantity is on an individual basis. In other words, if I have one Karl, it's going to fire at 100% efficiency. If I have 2 Karls, they're going to fire at 95% efficiency. If I have 10 Karls, they're each going to fire at, say, 75% efficiency. If I have 15 Karls, they're going to say fire at 70% efficiency. So the more you have, the less efficient it is, but the longer it will take, because the overall firepower quantity is consolidated to only a handful of Karls. So if you have 40 Karls here, you could probably take this in no time at all, say 30 minutes. But you're going to use a whole lot more resources because of it. So instead of using, say, 100 ammunition groups, you're going to use 300 ammunition groups, because each Karl is lessened in the amount of damage that it deals when you have more than one Karl or multiple Karls firing at a specific target. It's really irritating. That's also the same with fodder. You will burn through a whole lot more fodder if you use 40 Karls instead of 6 Karls. But the trade-off is you're going to complete it much faster with a whole lot of Karls. So I guess you could really boil it down to a time constraint. If you want to finish it fast, the more Karls you're going to need and the more resources and fodder and ammunition you need. If you're okay in doing it in your leisure time, if it's not contested, if you can take your time doing it, which, a lot of people can. I do that on many maps where there aren't many people. You can use a handful of Karls, and the damage for those Karls is more because you're using less of them. It's the same principle with queuing your it's the same principle with queuing your resources here. If you have 3 planets, if you have one planet is going to produce 40 million of whatever resource in 15 hours. If you have 2 planets producing resources instead of each one producing 40, each one is now going to produce 38 or 37. So the more you spend to increase your production, you will produce more because the quantity is more, but you will produce less per planet because the lesser amount of planets you have on a particular map will produce a higher volume of resources. For instance, that's why I have what I call production maps. I have maps with only 3 to 5 planets on them to maximize the amount of resources it produces. For instance, map 88 here. I use this map exclusively for rabo production and fuel production so I can transfer it to other maps. Because there's only 3 planets on here, I can maximize the amount of resources that is produced. So getting back to the question about the Karls. Once again, the more Karls you use, the faster you will take a planet, but the faster you will deplete the resources that you're using to take the planet. So it's really up to you what you have available to you, the resources and assets you have available, and who you may have, to help you out here. As you play later on, once you get up there in point value and you have a lot of maps, it's all, 100%, it's a cost-benefit analysis. My alliance and I, we can take a 30-gun planet in 15 minutes if we really wanted to, but we are going to expend an ungodly amount of resources for that ability. We only do that in very specific circumstances. So that's really the long and short of it as to how to set up Karls, how to use them properly, and really to use them in the most efficient way possible. Truth be told, there really is no efficient way to use them, just a more efficient way than the standard way to use them. There's not a whole lot you can do to mitigate your costs with regards to using your Karls. Now, in one of my later videos, I know I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to show you how you can produce free ammunition, but that requires that you have a lot of planets on your home map. I don't think it can be done on any other map simply because they don't allow it. So your best bet if you're on your home map is to get as many planets as possible on your home map. That will increase your group count so you don't have to artificially add groups via your titanium. That gets obnoxiously expensive. So in closing, the long and the short of this here is really test it out yourself. I can tell you how to do this and what will happen all day and all night, but until you try it for yourself, you're not really going to fully grasp what I'm saying. As far as your Karls are concerned, the closest I would put them, and only if you have to. I would never personally put them at 20 paces. It's too close, and if you need to maneuver them around, you have a higher chance of losing it. So I wouldn't put them more than 18 or really 18 away. That's the closest that I would put it. And you know this once again because you can count. Right here between enemy and planet, you need to count out 20 paces to the left. At least in the left in particular here. You could put it north, south, east, or west. But for me personally, it's right here in the west. So count over 20 to 18. And that's where we can pop that here. Now actually watch very closely. As soon as this gets just beyond the Karl here, it's going to kick off the firing right about now. So this is the minimum and maximum distance. So anything in here, you can also put Karls in here as well. And just remember, do not spread them too far apart. You'll run into problems when trying to feed them with ammunition. You don't want to have to spread your ammunition apart amongst a whole bunch of a whole bunch of Karls that are too far apart, because you're not going to be able to feed all of the Karls at one time, and that's what you need to do, especially if you require speed in taking a planet. Now, I personally don't have the time right now to sit here and take this planet, so once these are burned through, we'll go ahead and put these away. I've also gotten requests as far as questions as to how to properly save your capital ships, how to mitigate costs, how to make multiple maps work in your favor, or multiple maps work in your favor. How many planets do you need in order to produce an accurate or an adequate amount of a certain resource? So those are just a handful, and I've actually got them, well, not all of them, but most of them written down here so I don't forget them. But there's actually quite a lot that I'm going to be putting out within the next week to 2 weeks here. We just had Thanksgiving here, so I didn't do much for the past 2 days. So anyhow, thank you for joining me here. If you've got any questions, just leave them down in the comments. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe. I will be more than happy to put one of these out here for you if it'll help you out. And if it'll help other people out too, all you got to do is ask. Alright, thank you my friends, and take care.